By now, most of you have probably heard of the reports of counties that have voted to break away from Oregon and become part of Idaho. Well, this type of vote is not an unheard of development, and many pundits have claimed there is precedent. Should these counties get their wish, it would be a first-time event in American history. Let's cut through the political positioning, the wishful thinking, and the questionable constitutional analysis to see what it would take for these counties to move between states. We'll do that next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Welcome to the Constitution Study. Paul Engel here. We are here to read and study the Constitution, to teach a rising generation to be free, to look at what's going on in the world around us, and try to view it through a constitutional lens. I'm glad you could join me. As always, head to the website, constitutionstudy.com, where you can find out more. If you want more Constitution Study, you can hear me 5 days a week on the America Out Loud radio network. Find me at americaoutloud.com or use the America Out Loud app and search for the Constitution Study. You'll also find it on iHeartRadio. If you want to get more involved in studying the Constitution, please head to constitutionscholars.com. Sign up for your free account. Until Independence Day, you'll get a chance for a free book. I'm doing a raffle of a free book. You'll also get a $5 coupon for anything in the Constitution Scholars store just for registering for your free account. That's constitutionscholars.com. Look, you'll be able to find other constitutional scholars in your state that are just as interested in studying the Constitution as you are. And together, we can learn and study and teach the rising generation to be free. So with that, let's talk about what's going on in Oregon. On May 18th, 2021, the voters in 5 counties voted to secede from the state of Oregon and join the state of Idaho. Malheur, Sherman, Grant, Baker, and Lake counties joined Jefferson and Union counties, who had already approved such measures last year. Now, I have read and heard quoted a few comments on this vote, many claiming that there's a precedent for this. They point to the states of Kentucky, Maine, and West Virginia as examples. What is being proposed in Oregon, though, is unique in our history. Now, Oregon, like many states with large urban populations, has a schizophrenic personality. Voters in urban areas tend to prefer centralized control, large government programs, and restrictions on rights that are disfavored by the political class. For these reasons, they tend to vote for members of the Democratic Party. Rural areas, on the other hand, tend to prefer local control, different government programs, and they like exercising the rights disfavored by those in urban areas. In other words, they tend to vote for members of the Republican Party. In states where the urban population is about half of the state's number, this tends to lead not only to a serious divide in how people think the state should be run, but an almost tail-wagging-the-dog mentality, when the voters in the majority of the state are overruled by the population of a major city. Now, having lived most of my life in upstate New York, I'm very familiar with this phenomenon. Now, most people in this situation, like me and my family, simply move to another state. But what if you don't want to move? Do you stay and suffer under a regime you disagree with? Do you fight to change a system which is stacked against you? Or do you try to move your county rather than your family? New states have been created from other states in the past. Kentucky in 1792 and West Virginia in 1863 were both created out of the state of Virginia. And Maine was created from Massachusetts in 1820. There has been talk for years of California dividing up and creating new states as well. However, what the voters in Oregon are asking to do has never been done in American history. Rather than creating a new state, which has been done, they wish to transfer territory from one state to another. The U.S. Constitution includes a process for new states to be formed from the territory of one or more states. But there is nothing about a territory being transferred from one state to another. Now, should the move continue, it brings up some very interesting constitutional questions. Most people I've read or heard talk about this secession say that the move would have to be approved by the legislatures of both Oregon and Idaho and then be approved by Congress. After all, this was the process used to create Kentucky, Maine, and West Virginia, isn't it? Is that what the Constitution says? Quote, "New states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of another state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislatures of the states concerned as well as of the Congress." Now, there would be no new state being admitted to this union. So, unlike the states used as examples in these articles, Article 6, Section 3, Clause 1 does not apply. Does that mean the states wouldn't require the approval of Congress? No. So even though a new state would not be admitted to the union, what these counties are asking for is an agreement between two states, an interstate compact. According to Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 of the Constitution, quote, "No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state, or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay." If these states wish to enter into an agreement to transfer territory between them, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 of the Constitution says they would need the consent of Congress. Now, while I try to avoid political discussions here, I do not see how you can discuss the transfer of territory on this scale without doing so. The Oregon legislature is currently controlled by the Democratic Party, while the legislature of Idaho by the Republican. Would the Democrats in Oregon want to transfer the representation in Congress to a Republican-held state? Would the Republicans in Idaho want to take on the responsibility of this new territory? There may be additional tax revenues from these new citizens, but what about the cost of maintaining this new territory? And don't forget the reorganizing of both legislatures. Not only would this move require redistricting, depending on each state's constitution, it may also require changing the size of their legislature. Since the census will not be taken until 2030, no change in apportionment would happen until then. Would the legislature of Oregon trade the short-term consolidation of power for the long-term loss of representation? Then there's the politics of Congress to consider. Would Congress, which is currently controlled by the Democratic Party, wish to see the territory and the associated seats in the House and presidential electors transferred to Idaho? My instincts are that the legislatures in both Oregon and Washington, D.C. would not look favorably upon such an agreement. The Oregon vote is quite interesting to me. It shows both the desire of people to change and their willingness to fight for their land. Now, is that enough? Now, as of the writing of this article, I don't know how the legislature of Oregon will respond to this vote. Are the legislatures willing to trap people in an unhappy situation to further their political goals? We've seen that before in world history, and it doesn't end well. Does Oregon let these counties go like a jilted lover wanting only what is best for the target of their affections? Do Idaho legislators want these counties? Sure, they mean more representation in Congress and the presidential election, but that does not come without a cost. What do the people of Idaho think about absorbing some of their neighbors? I think the answer of how Congress would respond is a simpler one to answer. Whichever party controls the houses will do what is best for their party, not for the residents of these two states. Therefore, I doubt a House of Congress controlled by the Democratic Party would approve, while one controlled by the Republicans, well, they might. Since it would probably take years before such an agreement would even make it as far as consideration by Congress, your guess is as good as mine as to how they would actually vote. What this vote, along with prior votes in California, should prompt among all Americans is a fundamental question of freedom in a constitutional republic. What is the responsibility of a state when dealing with minority opinions? Should population centers overrule the will of the people of the rest of the state? How can these legislatures best represent the will of the people? We have a bicameral Congress specifically to prevent large population states from running roughshod over those with smaller populations. Should states look at that model and consider something similar in their legislature? Should our states have one house with district apportioned by population and another by land? Would allowing counties to transfer to a state where they think they would be better represented be a good thing? And what about the long-term ramifications of having more fluid state lines? To me, these are all valid questions that we should be asking, not just in Oregon and Idaho, but in every state in the nation. The discontent shown in Oregon and California and probably several other states should not be brushed off as if they're just sore losers. These are symptoms of a much more serious problem in our nation and the growing divides between us. Our willingness to allow others to live as they see fit and our desire to impose our will on others is creating schisms this nation has not seen since the 1860s. Rather than looking for politicians or programs to solve our problems, perhaps we should listen to George Washington from his first inaugural address. Quote, "And since the preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. If we are to preserve the sacred fire of liberty and this experiment in self-government, we, the people, must be worthy of the trust our founding fathers placed in us." I pray we figure that out soon, because the last time this nation was so divided, we had a civil war. So what do you think about what's going on in Oregon? Do you think the people in those counties have a good point, or that they're causing problems? Do you think transferring counties from one state to another is a good thing or a disruptive thing? I can see arguments on both sides. In fact, I'd love to see you comment. Please comment on this video, comment at the website, comment on YouTube, comment wherever you find it, because I think this is an interesting point, and I think there are many points of views, and I think we can maybe find a path if we listen to a lot of different people. The important thing is, I don't think we should simply brush off these counties in Oregon as people who are unhappy. The same way we shouldn't do that with what's been going on in California. Living most of my life in New York State, I remember people who talked about, just sending New York City and Long Island out to sea. No, we should take these seriously because they are a symptom of discontent, of division. And maybe we should think about how we can live our lives and minimize that division. Whether that's putting in place better systems of representation or simply understanding that we need to allow other people to live the way they want until they actually harm you. Either way, please consider this, give us comments, participate in the communication. You know what a really great place to do that? Go to constitutionscholars.com, start a thread. Let's start a discussion about this Oregon County vote and the concepts of redistributing territory among the states. Now, as I've said, if you haven't signed up already, you sign up between Memorial Day and Independence Day. I'll give you a $5 coupon to the store, and you'll be entered to win a free book, How to Read the Constitution in 30 Days. But I have another contest just for people in Scholars. See, I'm giving away a copy of my book, The Constitution Study, based on a raffle from people who actually post in one of the groups. So consider that. Let's get this discussion going. Let's be involved. Let's participate. Let's be engaged rather than passive participants, passive observers of what's going on in our nation. You can find out more. Go to constitutionstudy.com, share the article, share the video. Let's share this message. Let's get more and more people to consider whether or not this would be a good thing or not. Most of all, as you're sharing, remember, our goal is to read and study the Constitution and teach the rising generation to be free. Let's do what we can to expand the rights and liberties and freedoms of Americans, and do so legitimately, do so lawfully, and do so pleasantly. Then please come back and join me here next time on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to